Hi, welcome to Gloves Off. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be demystifying modern martial arts. We're going to be understanding practical self-defense techniques, looking at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, breaking down a couple of mixed martial arts fights, and even interviewing a couple of professional fighters. Hope you enjoy. Okay, now it's time for the breakdown. We're going to look at an MMA fight, we're going to watch it at full speed, and then we're going to watch it a second time, half speed, and we're going to break down what the guys are doing. It will help you understand what the fighters are trying to do in terms of their techniques, in terms of their progression, in terms of their mindset, and in some cases in terms of what defenses they could have as well. Hope you find it useful. Today's breakdown is going to be from CFL 3, between Ivar Peterson and Franz Stein. Okay, so let's have a look at that fight. Let's do a little bit of breakdown of the techniques involved. We'll look at it in slow motion and just highlight some of the techniques that the guys are using and what they're trying to achieve. Okay, let's go. Right, first thing Ivar's looking at doing is closing the distance. He's going to set up with a few strikes and he's looking to close the distance, get his opponent's hips against the cage. Here we go. And looking for the double leg takedown, like a rugby tackle if you will. There we go, very nice. He's trying to get around to the side in top position now. But his opponent, Franz, is trying to bring his knee through the inside there, trying to get his legs around the outside of his opponent. At least that's a better position on the ground if you're on your back. But no, look at this transition into side mount and then straight into top mount. Beautiful transition there. Ivar's now in top mount. Look at the hips. The hips are very heavy from that position. He's trying to maintain and control the position first, and that's very important. So from here, the most common type of escape is called an Upa escape. And it looks like Franz is looking to try the Upa escape now. There we go. But as he tries to roll Ivar over, Ivar's taking the arm and he's looking for an armbar. So, inside the armbar, Franz is trying to slam his way out of it. So he's going to pick Ivar up and just try to slam him onto the ground so he removes the armbar. Unfortunately for him, as he lands, Ivar's sweeping him over the top. Look at that. Over the top and back into top mount. So this is a very dominant position. His strategy from here looks to be initially to control and then to do some ground and pound. What we mean by ground and pound, he's throwing down some strikes, and from here his focus is either on getting a technical knockout or he may look for a submission. Now a lot of the time when you're striking at your opponent like this, his arms are coming up. Look, Franz's arms are coming up because he's trying to defend the strikes, and that actually leaves him vulnerable to an armbar. And you can see from here, Ivar's just continuing, he's trying to soften him up a little bit. Franz is trying to keep his head close, very much the right thing to do from there, keep his head close and close that distance. And here we go, this is the armbar setup. There we go, leg comes over, Ivar's taking the wrist, he's trying to hyperextend the elbow. Franz is trying to spin through the hitchhiker escape, great escape from there, but Ivar's got wrist control. And you'll see now he's pushing his hips upwards, their elbows hyperextended. Very dangerous place here for Franz to be, and the referees stop the fight. There we go. So, very nice fight by Ivar Peterson. great control, great transitions, and really that follows the formula, if you like, for the groundwork. Improve your position, get in one of the best possible places, and finish with an armbar. Beautiful. Okay, so at the end of that video, we saw Ivor submitting Franz with an armbar from top mount. So let's have a little bit of a look at that armbar. This is Vusso's here to help me today. So, Ivor was in top mount, and essentially the armbar is very common from this position. So just to demonstrate this, Vusso's going to push up on my chest. I'm going to put my hands on his chest, and I'm going to drop down to the side. Now, from this position, Ivor was there trying to extend this arm out. One thing you noticed actually is that Franz nearly escaped, and the move he used to escape, I like to call the hitchhiker for this reason. So as he was pulling the arm back, Franz tried to take the arm this way. So, why didn't that work? Well, the reason Ivor managed to finish the fight with a armbar was because he had wrist control. So from this position, as he fell back with the arm, his knees were nice and tightly squeezed together for control of the arm here. He was pulling the wrist backwards, and then he had wrist control. Look at this. If you can control the wrist and your opponent can't get to rotate their wrist, they're not going to be able to escape in that direction. So Ivor did a great job of here. Everything's nice and tight. He had control, and from this position, there's no escape. He slowly pushed his hips up. Really from this position, it's not you putting down on the wrist that will actually finish the armbar and put this pressure against the elbow. It's you using your hips pushing up. So from this position, you can see right at the end there, he pushes his hips up, and there's the submission. Great way to finish. Martial arts fall into one of three categories, basically. We're talking about practical martial arts, sportive martial arts, and traditional martial arts. If we look at traditional first, traditional martial arts are generally very flowy, beautiful to watch, and they have a long history. We're talking about things like Kung Fu and Aikido. Those arts may not necessarily have very much of a practical bias, believe it or not. Having seen the Bruce Lee movies, you'd think otherwise. The next one, sportive martial arts. Sportive martial arts are arts that again may have a long history, but over the years guys have introduced more rules to allow it to be practiced safely and to allow an element of competition without too much danger. So we're looking at things like judo, karate, taekwondo, martial arts like that. Doesn't mean they didn't have a practical root, but a lot of the time, because of the number of rules that were introduced and the fact that there aren't the same rule sets on the streets, they've actually become less practical. Then we have martial arts like Sistema and Krav Maga that are very practical. Very difficult to train because of the damage that you're looking to inflict, and not so nice to watch. The reason you don't see more Krav Maga in movies and you see lots of Kung Fu is because Kung Fu is a beautiful art to watch, not necessarily because it works. Who invented MMA? Well, MMA had a mixed history with a few different threads. To a certain extent, the Brazilians had a large stake in it, in that Helio Gracie opened up challenge matches, and from that point onwards had matches where there were sort of no holds barred. They used to call it Vale Tudo, no holds barred in Portuguese, and you know, that sort of helped with the culture of street fighting, if you like, in Brazil. There was also Luta Livre, which was an opposing martial art to Gracie or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at the time, and that helped also develop the whole fighting mindset from the Brazilian side. In Japan there was shoot fighting, and that had some rules some which were a little bit weird and wonderful here. There were some rules about open hand striking under certain rule sets and those sort of things. But that also had an influence. When you look at guys like Ken Shamrock, they came out of that sort of background. And obviously when it comes to the States and MMA becoming a global phenomenon, that was all about the UFC. And the UFC was created by Rorion Gracie back in '92, something like that I think it was. So I mean that obviously had a huge impact on it, and I think that's where the global explosion really happened. Before that point there was a lot of traditional myths in the martial arts, if you like, and that was what really opened it up, and that was pretty much thanks to the Gracie family.
MMA industry in South Africa is really in its teething stages, and we are at a stage now that we can definitely say within the next 2 years, in my opinion, we'll be up there with the world's best productions. From a production point of view, what EFC Africa is doing is awesome. So MMA South Africa, yes, we're moving forward. It's very big in the US and the UK and up in Europe, but I think before long, 2 years, we'll definitely be up there with the bigger productions, and also the level of the type of athlete we have in our production will be on top class, and I think we can measure them with the rest of the global community.
There are different mindsets within Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and they tend to fall into two categories mainly. And one is that you should relax, be as efficient as possible, bide your time, wait for the opponent to gas, and then take advantage of a mistake by the opponent. And the other one is to attack and push forward. They're both valid in different ways, but certainly with the first idea about relaxing, that seems to come more out of the Helio Gracie side of the Gracie family. Simply because he was a smaller guy, he was skinny, he wasn't very big, so by default when he fought he ended up initially being overwhelmed by the other person's athleticism or strength. So what he taught himself to do was to relax and just bide his time, you know, be very efficient, don't waste any energy, and then after a while the opponent starts to gas, and then you can look for a mistake the opponent makes, take advantage of it and win the fight. As a result, some of his fights were very long. I think one was 3 hours and 40 minutes. So that mindset works for a longer fight. However, when you look at competitions nowadays, white belt IBJJF rules are 5 minutes. So really you haven't got the luxury of being able to chill and relax and wait in 5 minutes. This is for a white belt, by the way. So you need to really push forward. And Marcelo Garcia, I think at one stage, said something on the lines of, your opponent can't attack while they're too busy defending. So the strategy there is to push forward, is to bombard. Okay, keep combining techniques together, put the opponent on the back foot until they make a mistake, and then go from there. And it's probably, to a certain extent, more valid in situations where you have got guys in tournaments that are strong and athletic and fast. Those guys, within 5 minutes, they're still going to have some gas left. So if you relax and allow yourself to be dominated to a certain degree, you're going to really struggle from that point to move your way back up the hierarchy and win the fight. So both methods, both mindsets are valid in their own right. And personally, I think there's a time for each. You know, and it's nice to feel both in terms of the sparring. So one day you could be chilling, relaxing, flowing. The next day you could be going hard and pushing for the submissions. Are all positions equal? No, they're not. When a fight goes to the ground, it's important to recognize that some positions are better than others. And there's a saying within the Jiu-Jitsu world, position before submission. So the mindset with that is really, if you're in a bad place, if you try to attack from a bad place, you can actually open up yourself to being submitted yourself or being hit or whatever it may be. So really you're always looking at improving your position. So if you're in a bad position, the focus is defend and then escape. If you're in a good position, the focus is to maintain and then attack. So what are the good and bad positions? Well, apart from, you know, if we put half guard to one side and some of the other positions like knee on belly that can be a little bit one way or the other, the main positions, if we look at those, there's a hierarchy. And I like to think about this as a diamond, if you like. So right at the bottom, the worst place to be is underneath rear mount, and then it's underneath top mount, and then it's underneath side mount. Then it's inside the guard. The next one up is having the guard. Now we're starting to move into a positive position. The next position from that would be having side mount. Second from the top would be having top mount, and the very best position would be having rear mount. Now obviously within that structure there are things that do vary. Some guys find it easier to finish a fight from top mount than they do from rear mount, or easier to finish a fight from or a match from side mount than they do from top mount. So it does vary generally, but your focus really is on proving your position and getting a position before looking for the submission. And that's important because it means that your opponent will be controlled all the way through the fight. I remember when I was learning, I think it was out in LA, and I had top mount and I stepped out of top mount and went into side mount because I felt more comfortable at the time from side mount and submitting from there. And Hoyan Gracie said, Gary, he said, what are you doing? He said, you had the prettiest girl at the dance and you just went for her ugly sister. And really it was that mindset that should prevail in Jiu-Jitsu. So you should always be mindful of it, even in MMA as well. Always look at gradually improving your position and getting to a better space so you can finish the fight safely. Okay, it's time for some self-defense. Something that's really important is that any self-defense technique that you think about using is a last resort, because things like awareness and avoidance are very, very important, and they should come first. If you're in a situation where you need to use a self-defense technique, then there's already been some mistakes made and you're in a bad situation. So it is very much the last thing that you need to be thinking of. So avoid the situation in the first place, and we'll be talking about that. And there's always the Nike technique, which is just running away. No one loses that fight. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of strangle defenses. It's very important, especially for women, to understand how to defend themselves against someone that's trying to strangle them. In this case, it's going to be against a wall. So someone's grabbing you around the neck here, and they strangle you in this position. First thing we're going to do is bring our arms up. This is very natural, bring your arms up to defend here. Okay, this is important just in case there's a headbutt or something like that coming. As you slide your arms up, you're going to reach and you're going to spread your fingers over the top. Okay, you will find a fingertip. It may change from one time to the next, but you will find a fingertip here somewhere. When you find one, you turn your hand around and grab it. Your other arm is going to come through underneath and you're going to pin the wrist. And from here, this elbow, which is tucked in, goes down towards the ground. Okay. The bad guy has one of two choices. They can either end up with a possibly broken finger, or they can go down to the ground. Okay, in which case you're going to get up and run away. So, one more time. You're here, there's a strangle. Your hands come up. You find a fingertip. Always going to find a fingertip here. You grab the finger. Your arm is going to come in nice and close here. And then you're going to go down to the ground. One thing that's really important from here is as you come up, don't forget to turn your hand around when you grab a finger, okay? We don't want to be grabbing this way around. So as you come up, as you find a fingertip, whichever fingertip it is, you turn your hand around and grab. Also, this other arm comes through. We need to make sure we're going to use a hook grip here to pin the wrist to the chest, nice and tight, okay, to stop the opponent escaping. And now as we pull this down, don't follow them down too much, okay? Allow them to be forced down onto the ground, okay? And then you can run away. Thanks for watching. If there's something in particular you'd like covered or a question you'd like answered, drop me a line and we'll see if we can put it in one of the episodes.